What's up, everybody? You are listening to the Early Risers podcast. I'm your host, Schuyler Diehm, and I am an early riser. Now, when I say early riser, I don't necessarily mean waking up at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. Because to me, an early riser is someone who wakes up earlier than they have to and uses that time for uninterrupted personal development. So you could have to wake up at 8 a.m. but wake up at 4 a.m. and for those 4 hours use your phone or lay around in bed, but you're not really an early riser. But if you wake up and you use that time for uninterrupted personal development, then you are an early riser. And that's why we call this the Early Risers podcast, because it's all about helping you live a more effective life. So today's special guest, I guess I'll let her introduce herself. It's a very, very special episode. I'm excited, but why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Katerina. I'm Schuyler's girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is our first kind of interview together and talking about our relationship, which is scary, but exciting.
Yeah, I'm
definitely
hyped to have you here. You wanted to share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah,
More than just my girlfriend?
Yeah, there's lots more to me. Yeah, so I'm a nanny. I've been doing it for a while, but currently I'm trying to transition into the entrepreneur world and trying to build my own business. I have a blog right now called Green and Gold. I'm kind of in the transition period where I'm not exactly sure where to go with it, but I'm just exploring all the possibilities at the time being. So it's exciting, and it's like a whole new world. So it's fun for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll link to that in the show notes for anyone who's interested, or down below if you're watching the video. Which, by the way, if you're not watching the video, you should definitely check it out because you got some pretty faces there. But we got some questions. So basically, I put on my Instagram one of those question things, and I basically asked, do you have any questions for us? And this was a while back, but we got a few, and we'll probably dive into those today, and then just talk a little bit about our relationship and relationships in general, because we've actually had some growth in our life and in our relationship through listening to someone else's podcast, Tom Bilyeu, Impact Theory, or he calls those episodes Relationship Theory. And we've really enjoyed just sitting down and listening and talking about what they discuss. So, maybe if you like this, maybe listen to it with your significant other and see what conversation it sparks. Because as we'll probably talk about, conversation and openness and communication is one of the most powerful things in our relationship and probably in most relationships too. So I'm very, very excited for today. I guess we'll start off, Katerina, by talking about how we met, because we got a couple questions about that. And
do I get to tell it?
Yeah, of course.
I love telling this story.
It's one of my favorites. It's a great story, so I guess
it's so interesting. So about a year ago, Schuyler and I were both searching on Tinder, and we matched, and I messaged him first, which is weird because I usually let the guys approach me. And we talked for a bit, and right off the bat, I could tell that Schuyler was a little bit different because, if you're familiar with Tinder, it's mostly for just quick hangouts, but Schuyler really wanted to get to know me, and I was like, this is weird, but this is really nice. So we talked for a bit, and then it switched over to texting, and I think we had plans to hang out, but it just never worked out.
Yeah, you ignored me.
And then I ignored Schuyler. He asked me to hang out twice, and I just ignored him, and it was so long ago I couldn't even remember why. But yeah, and then fast forward to a year later, which was 7 months ago, pretty much.
Yeah.
7 or 8 months ago. I was just searching through Facebook, and Schuyler was in suggested friends, which is odd because usually the people in your suggested friends are people you have mutual friends with, and we had none. And I was like, I vaguely remember this kid. So I creeped through his profile, and I was like, I remember him. He just wanted to have conversation on Tinder. He really wanted to get to know me. So I added him, and a few hours later, he messaged me. It was quick, and it made me so happy. And then, conversation picked up again, and we had each other's numbers, which I totally forgot about.
Yep.
And and then we planned a date for, I don't even know, it was probably a week later.
Yeah, it was pretty quick. So I want to give some backstory to that because it is a good story. So I was traveling before she friend requested me. 2 weeks before, I was in California for a seminar, and then I went to Colorado to visit my sister. And while I was in Colorado, I was thinking to myself, I haven't been on a date in a while. I'm not really like looking for a relationship, but it would be nice to just kind of have some sort of a connection, kind of put myself out there again. So I had the idea. I was like, I thought of Kat, and I remembered we matched on Tinder. I remembered like it was a really good conversation, which does not happen on Tinder. And so I was like, you know what? Like, it's been a long time. When I get back to Connecticut, which is where I'm from now, I'm gonna ask her out on a date. And so this was before she contacted me. This was 10 days before. And so
Creepy.
I'm in, yeah, you were stalking me. So I was in Colorado, and I had that idea, and then I was in New Jersey for a week because that's where my parents are from, and my sister was there. And while I was in New Jersey, before I could get back to Connecticut and contact her, that's when I got the friend request. So.
I contacted first.
You did.
It was crazy.
You did.
It was crazy. And we didn't learn this, like, little backstory until a few months into, I think we were actually dating at the time.
Yeah.
And you were like, so this is weird, but I was thinking about you before you messaged me. And we were like, no way, that didn't happen.
Yeah, because, okay, so it was like, for me, I wanted to say it on the first date. Like, I really wanted to, but I was like, no, like, that's creepy, that's weird, like, that's not something you come out with the first time you meet a girl. And yeah, so it was just a really, really interesting experience. And I'd written in my phone, and I still have the note to this day, because I couldn't remember her name, but I remember her Instagram handle being Kitty the Blonde, which is no longer there. Sorry, you can't visit that. But yeah, I remember that. So I wrote down, like, text Kitty the Blonde. And that was the note on my phone. I have it to this day, like, with the date, so she knows I'm not lying. But
oh, it's so good. And it's funny because so our first date was at a coffee shop, and it was like the middle of the day, so not your average date, you know, usually you go to dinner, but it was different. It was like during the day, like you actually want to get to know the person, see them in the daylight, like it was awesome. And I canceled the first time we were supposed to go because I was so nervous. I did have something to do, but I like exaggerated it. I was like, oh, I won't be able to make it, because I was I hadn't been on an actual date in a real long time. So I rescheduled, and then the day of, I was ready to reschedule again because I was just so nervous for some reason. And then I pushed myself to go, but we were both extremely nervous during our date. We had we both had our coffees, and we were like fidgeting with the coffees the whole time. Yeah. It was amazing.
It was a really good first conversation, and I remember leaving like just very happy. I was like, okay, that was good, because I don't know, a lot of girls like I knew in college and like anything like that, like there was no depth. It was just like a very surface level type of thing, but like we got pretty deep on our first date.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
It was awesome. And we still go to the same coffee shop like every few weeks.
Shout out Rebel Dog Coffee in Plainville, Connecticut. If you're ever in the area,
love you.
Check it out.
It's so good.
All right.
Next
Good
question?
on that one? Yeah, let's do it. So Tommy Lockwood, thank you, man, for the question. What approach was used between both of you to go from not serious to serious? And I think that's a good question, because there was a transition. Like we started off, I mean, we weren't that serious. Like I was talking about traveling, I was talking about leaving, which is a story for a whole other day. But
which made me nervous because I really liked him.
Yeah.
And he kept saying, like, when was it? It was July.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying, in November, my lease is up, I'm going to start traveling. And so for me as a girl, and I'm sure like anyone can relate, you're like, okay, that doesn't give us much time. So like, where is this going to go?
Yeah.
So the first few months, first few weeks, it was like casual, and we didn't really, we wouldn't really say what we were thinking.
Yeah. So what was the approach to go from not serious to serious?
I don't remember the actual transition. I just think we went like 0 to 100 real quick. Yeah. So from the outside looking in, it looks like we went pretty fast in the first few months, because I think a month in, I met your parents.
Yeah.
He brought me to New Jersey to meet his parents, all of his friends.
Which you killed.
Which was amazing, and it was but it didn't feel fast.
Yeah.
For us, like it didn't.
Yeah.
If I had heard that like a few months ago, like, oh, meeting the parents after a month, like that's crazy, but it felt right.
Yeah.
And then I think saying I love you was the big, like, okay, this is serious.
Yeah. And that didn't take me that long to say. I said it first, just so everyone knows.
I was about to, and he beat me to it.
But Yeah, I think it was interesting because for me, like, I remember asking a couple of my friends, like, hey, when did you say it to your girlfriends? And it was like 6 months, like, it was pretty long, and I was like, it feels like it's too soon to say, but, like, it feels like it's not. Like, it feels like it's right.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's the trouble with, like, asking outside sources. It's because, like, you can get a kind of a ballpark idea, but at the same time, no relationship is ever going to be the same.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
if we waited 6 months, like, it just wouldn't feel right.
Yeah.
Like, it felt right when it happened.
And I want to give a background to the people listening, too. Like, I was taught, like, I love you is a very, very serious phrase. Like, it's not something I throw around to people. Like, obviously, I say it to my friends and obviously all that, but, like, when it comes to a romantic relationship, like, that's something I value. And, like, to say it that soon, like, it felt like it was too soon, like, just from everyone else's standards, but in general, like, it just felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So.
And so, I mean, going back to the question, we're kind of sidetracking. Yeah. I don't really know, but I guess we started really investing in the relationship. We started asking deeper questions, like, about each other's families and even, like, the future. That was a big one that you have to be really careful with in relationships because you don't know how the other person's going to take that. Yeah. It's like it's a scary step, but we started talking about our individual futures. Like, oh, I really want this for my future, and I think it was interesting to kind of see, like, okay, I see where you want to go in the future, and then at some point it just collided, and we started talking about, like, things we'll do together in the future, which, I don't know, it brings it to a whole nother level. It does. Definitely.
But yeah, you got to be careful with that, for sure, because a lot of people, definitely a lot of guys, like, they're not okay with that soon.
Yep.
But yeah, I think we were just, like, very, very open with each other. Once again, it comes back to communication. Like, we were just talking a lot and getting deep and, like, really being intentional with the time we spent together. I know, like, even though it was, like, I was young, like, past relationships, it was never really like that. Like, I never got deep with people. I never talked about, like, past, future, anything along those lines.
And I think a lot of it comes, too, with experience. Like, if you had asked me some of the questions that you and I ask each other, if I had been asked them, like, years ago, it's like I really had no depth to my background and my story. But, like, because we've both gone through heartbreaks and because we've gone through, like, tougher times, it makes our deep conversations that much more interesting.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So the specific method, just to clear it up.
I guess, just getting deep with each other, just being very invested in the other person, because that, when you show interest, like, that is the greatest
that's a good point.
Feeling ever.
That's a good point.
And that's like, okay, we're both in this. Yeah. So that's kind of the transition from, we're just casually hanging out and we kind of like each other, to, like, this is a relationship, this is a partnership. Yeah,
and I know, like, some people, the transition from, like, casual to not casual, or, like, no relationship to relationship is just, like, it just happens. But I know for a lot of people, too, and for us, like, there was a question, like, do you want to get serious? Do you want to be my girlfriend? Do you want to, like, go out?
Or in Schuyler's words, so you want to, what'd you say? You want to date? I think that's how you asked me.
I have a way with words.
So you want to date?
Yeah. That was a good moment, too. We were watching the sunrise, which was cool.
Yeah.
Hashtag early risers.
Hashtag.
Awesome. So the next question, the last one, because we kind of had a few, like, someone asked Tyler, I think it was, shout out you, what are you guys doing for the holidays? That was cool. We can answer that.
I guess so, yeah.
We spent time with each other's families, and
which was amazing.
Got to know each other's families more, which was really special. It was great. Yeah. Anything you want to say about that?
No, it was an amazing day. Just, I don't know, really, I don't know the word. Yeah. Just, like, being with each other's families, it's a really great feeling.
Yeah, it was nice. Very nice. Awesome. The next question from Do All Things, shout out you. How do you guys balance being each other's significant other and working on yourself individually? I really like this question a lot.
Go for it.
One word, communication. I think that's the key. It's cool because we both have that growth mindset, which I think is, like, in a relationship, that is so crucial. Because we both know, like, we are going to develop and grow, and, like, in a year we're not going to be the same people. So I think like a big thing with our communication, like we are very open and honest about when we need time for ourselves. Like if I'm working on something, I can just outwardly say honestly, like, look, like we can't hang out today. Like I have to get something done or whatever. You're really good with that too. And like the thing is, like what's so important about that is there's no feelings hurt in that process, because we both like we respect and we understand. I mean, I feel like you do.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
never been really said, but we respect and understand, like we both have goals, we both have things we want to accomplish, and yeah, it's just the respect there and the communication. Like I'm not going to take it personally if you don't want to hang out today, or you even, I mean, we do want to hang out, but like you can't hang out because you're choosing or you're prioritizing something else. It's not taken personally.
Yeah, and I think that's there's a big difference between a healthy relationship and unhealthy, and it can be unhealthy when you start feeling like you don't want your own time and you don't want to be your own person. It's like, no, we need to be together all the time. Like that's extremely unhealthy, because let's say in the future, like God forbid something happened, like, and that person was removed from your life, like who are you now?
Yeah.
Like you've lost your identity because you failed to work on yourself as well as the relationship. But in a healthier way, I think it's, for us at least, like we both have such different visions for our careers pretty much. And so knowing that you need alone time, like in my head, it's not, oh, he needs time away from me. It's, oh, he's spending time working on himself, and in the future, that's going to affect both of us in a positive way.
Yeah.
Like when you're working on yourself, then you're growing, and I'm working on myself, I'm growing. So then, like, there's no way we aren't growing together.
Right.
And it's just, and like you said, it's healthy. Like something we started doing recently was phone restrictions. Because obviously when you, I don't know, are in a new relationship, you want to talk all the time, and we text often, and we'll send each other memes, like that's our thing. And I love it, but during the work day, we try to say good morning, and then work all day, and then we'll talk again at like night. We'll have a FaceTime at night and just recap the day. And I think that's a better approach too, because then you don't run out of things to talk about. Yeah. And you don't, if you're talking all the time, you don't have a chance to like miss that person. Yeah. So it's a balance. You have to make conscious effort. It's not something that just happens. Yeah. So that's something to be said. Like you have to be willing to work on yourself and not worry about like, oh my God, are they gonna leave? Like. Yeah.
And I think too, like we make, self-growth and self-development a priority, but we also make each other a priority. Like it's not like I'm for 7 days a week or for 14 days in a row, I'm just working on my business or myself. Like we prioritize spending time with each other too. Like if we have like a pretty busy week, maybe we'll try to schedule like the other day we went into a coffee shop at 5 a.m. Like we got up that early. She's awesome for doing that. Just to go to a coffee shop and hang out before our day started, because she's a nanny. She has to be at work at a certain time, and I have stuff I want to get done. And so we made time rather than just saying, oh, we don't have time to hang out this week. Yeah. Because we prioritize it.
Yeah,
so.
And that's 100% a joint effort, because if it were just you trying to like, oh, let's make time, and I was kind of like, I don't really want to put an effort, or the other way around, like it wouldn't work. Yeah. But we both said, okay, 5 a.m. I had to make like, it was like a little sacrifice, but it didn't feel like it. I was like, okay, I'm not at the point where I can wake up and be an early riser yet. I'm working on it. But I was like, I'm gonna make this little sacrifice and like probably be tired the rest of the day, but I want to spend a little bit of quality time with you, because I think it was a busier week and we didn't get to see each other much. So you just have to put in, like it all comes back to effort. Yeah. You really you both have to put in effort. It can't be one-sided. Yeah. And I have a question for you that I definitely want to talk about. So this idea that like when you start a relationship, obviously people call it the honeymoon phase. Like you are so infatuated with each other. You always want to spend time with each other. You always want to talk. And for me in the past, and I know for a lot of relationships, like that is taken as an opportunity to kind of coast and to kind of, really spend time. Like you love spending time with each other. You love hanging out. You love doing whatever. And a lot of people don't put in the effort there. Where in reality, like those first few months, you're creating the foundation. Like if you don't put in the work, you don't get to learn enough about each other. Like you start getting adjusted to each other, but you're not really
putting in the effort to get to know each other, get to know boundaries, get to know everything like that, like, you're not really setting up the relationship. So I guess my question is, like, what kind of stuff did we do at the beginning to set that foundation?
Yeah, so, I mean, first of all, like, the honeymoon phase is, you said it's people see it as a time to, like, just coast. It should be the exact opposite. That's the time where you should be putting in the most effort and just, I don't know, making the most time and asking questions. And one big thing we did was the deep question exercise, which I loved, and we're going to keep doing it forever and ever.
Talk about it for people who don't know.
So I basically just Googled a bunch of, like, deep questions to ask your partner. And I wrote down, there's like 70 questions. I wrote them down on individual note cards. And what we did, obviously you can't do it in one sitting because most of the questions require like long answers and long discussions.
Which is a good thing, because if you write down like 100 questions and you go through it in like 2 days, we're still going through them. Like, we're not done.
So we take a few every night, and you can bring them to like a restaurant. Like last night we went on a date and we brought questions and we just asked each other, and it just sparks conversation. And a lot of the questions in the pile, like, these were deep questions. They weren't like, what's your favorite color? Like, they were deep. One of the questions was, what are 3 things I could do that would cause you to break up with me? And like, people don't ask these questions. Like, it's a little uncomfortable at first, but these things should be brought up early on. You should be talking about, if you do this, like, we're broken up. Like, there's no coming back, and you need to know that now, so then in the future, like, you don't do that.
Yeah.
You need to come up with tactics, like, as a team, because you're in a relationship, but it's a team. I think people forget that. It's like, oh, we're just in love, it's just love. But no, it's like a team. You have to put in work. And, I mean, tactics as in, okay, what are we going to do if our schedules get busy? And like we said, make time for each other, make conscious effort to have a coffee date in the morning at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
So we built a foundation, which is so important, and we did all of that in the honeymoon phase, which, in my opinion, the honeymoon phase is still going on. I mean,
absolutely.
I don't know how long it's supposed to last. We've been dating for 7 months, but asking questions was a big one.
Yeah.
I feel like that really brought us close together. And there's some questions that are uncomfortable, and they might bring up like ugly feelings, or, you know, nobody really likes talking about their past in relationships, but a lot of the questions ask, like, I don't know, one of them's like, have you ever been in love before me? And it's like, that's super uncomfortable, but I'm in this with you, and I want to know every little thing.
Yeah.
I want to know how you feel about all these things, so that I want to know what makes you tick, so like in the future I can avoid that thing.
Yeah.
And I want to know what makes you happy, so then I can do that for you. And so just, questions. Ask all of the questions, like the super deep, ugly, gritty questions. Yeah,
and I think for a lot of people that's like super uncomfortable, but especially when you're going through that honeymoon phase, like, that's probably when things are going to be the best. I mean, not really, but like you feel the best, like, you're willing to put in the effort. Like, if you're like an 80-year-old man, you're gonna be just a grumpy, like, you don't want to deal with anything. But if you take the time in the beginning to like really figure out, okay, what's the dynamic, like, what do I need to know, and then at that point you can work through it. And like Kat said, like, there's been some uncomfortable conversations because of these questions, but they've allowed us to be stronger on the other side and be better and know more about each other and understand each other. And so, like, my warning is, if you do this, like, you need to be willing to be uncomfortable, and you need to be willing to bring up some things. And in a way, you can look at it like, you know, if you have a suit of armor and there's a chink in it, you're going to want to find that chink as soon as you can, rather than letting it go on for years and then discovering it and then having to deal with it down the line. So, like, we've eliminated some chinks, like, already. Yeah. And I think, like, for any couple, new or old, like, in order to really have a thriving relationship, you need to be open with each other. You need to really understand that person. Like, I can't even imagine, like, going like 20 years with someone and then finding out something about them that they've been hiding. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like,
piggybacking off that, another thing we did was just admitting right away if you are uncomfortable or if you're upset about something. I'm like the queen of holding in my feelings, or I used to be, and so I'm like, working on it, and sometimes it takes a while. Like if I am upset, for someone to ask me like, are you okay, or are you okay, and we say I'm fine, and then eventually it comes out, and it feels gross, and like no one wants to deal with like ugly feelings, but in the long term it's going to be so much better, because when you keep things in, like over time it bottles up, and then one day I blow up on you for no reason, and you're like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's this one thing I've been holding in for like a year, and that's extremely unhealthy. That's how fights get started. That's how relationships start to break.
Yeah, and that builds resentment too, like
Yeah.
on both sides. Like on one side, if you were to hold something in and then like blow it up on me, like I would resent you for not being honest with me, like because I don't know what's going on inside your head. But then on your end, like if you have something that's bottling up, like that's going to build resentment, obviously, and I would have no idea. So like even on my end too, like if there's no communication, if there's no willingness to get uncomfortable and open up and have deep conversations, like I can't see a relationship going far. Like it's hurt relationships in my past. Like it's not healthy at all.
No. And I think there is something to be said, like if you feel like your partner doesn't validate your feelings, then that's a reason you might clam up with those things. But I think stating that from the beginning, like all the things you're feeling are valid. Like I'm never going to make you feel bad for being upset about something, or because like it just makes it feel like we're both human. Like I sometimes relationships, you tend to kind of disregard the other person and in moments of anger and stuff like that, but you need to just always be validating each other.
Yeah.
Even if it's the silliest thing, like don't get defensive. You need to talk through it, because like overall, like this is the person you chose to be with. This is the person you chose to like love and build a relationship with. So why wouldn't you want to make them feel like the most like amazing person in the world?
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's I've mentioned this to you definitely, but there's a book out there by Diehm, and it's called Millionaire Success Habits, and he talks about when he was a parent, when he was dealing with his daughter one day, his daughter got super upset because she felt like he was favoring her brother, so favoring his son over his daughter. And his first initial reaction was just to brush her off, like, no, you're being ridiculous, I love you both equally. But then when he thought about it, it's like, okay, we're not really addressing the situation, we're addressing her feelings, because she obviously feels like this for some reason, so we need to dive into why. And like if we have to show evidence of why that's not true, okay, but like the worst thing you can do is just brush it off, like, oh, you're being jealous, or oh, you're like,
that's so unhealthy.
yeah,
because it's just mean too.
Yeah.
It's like you love this person under it all, like even if you're in a fight, like there's so much love there, so why are you choosing to make them feel bad about how they're, and then in the future they're gonna be like, I'm not gonna say anything anymore.
Yeah, and that's huge too, and that causes like you hide things and you bottle things up, and then that resentment builds, and at the end, like there are just mixed feelings that you don't share with each other, and that can hurt you for sure.
Yeah. And going back to the honeymoon phase thing, if you are doing these activities and these like building these tactics and this foundation in the honeymoon phase, I don't know, I feel like you're not gonna feel the end of the honeymoon phase, because I feel like it's good, and then like we're not so good. But if you build a foundation and you keep putting in effort, like it can only go up.
Right.
And there's gonna be dips and you're gonna have problems, like we're human, and there's no reason not to address them and not to sit in those feelings, because then it's just silly. Like we're not being our true selves if we're avoiding conflict all the time. So I don't know.
And that brings up something. So I think like you said, like there's gonna be dips, there's gonna be bad points, and I think one of the key things there, like knowing that there's a mutual commitment between each other. So can you describe like your definition of commitment, like what commitment means to you and how you kind of show it, or how you expect it to be shown in a relationship?
Yeah, so I mean, bottom line, it's we're in this together no matter what. And like I said, you and I talked early on, like these are the few things that you could do that I would say we're done and we're not coming back to this. And stating that was so important. And so commitment is really just honoring those things, like completely staying away from them, locking them away, like we're not going to do that, because that means that this would be done. And that's just such a sacred thing. And knowing that this is sacred, like I think today, especially with social media, like it's so easy to cheat, it's so easy to flirt with other people, but just trying to stray away from that, trying to stray away from this generation's idea of relationships, which is not great.
Not great at all.
No loyalty. Like, I'm not talking on everybody, but a lot of what I've seen lately is like no one, what's the word? No one respects loyalty. No one really respects the idea of a relationship, because it's not just someone to post pictures of and to post on Snapchat. Like, of course that's nice every once in a while, but like there is an underlying commitment with this person. Like, we are together, and no matter what problems we have, no matter what we go through, like, we're a team and we chose to be together. And I think that's really important. And also, not just dating to date. Like, I think we're at a point finally where it's like, okay, we see ourselves taking the next steps in a few years. Like, we are building something together. And it's not just, oh, we're going to date and see where it goes. Like, we have had talks about, like, where we see ourselves going in the future, and we're both so committed to that it's like, if you broke my trust or I broke your trust, that would be the opposite of commitment. Like,
right.
You have to build trust, you have to put your full trust in someone. So commitment is really just knowing, like, this is us, like, we got in this for a reason. I know marriage is like the top level of commitment, and we've talked about this, there's like levels, like engagement, but the overlying feel is like relationships are as important as that almost, because we're not just dating to have fun. Like, we're dating to get to that point eventually. And so there just has to be respect in that commitment of, like, yeah, I want you, and there's going to be other people who, like, are handsome, and we've talked about this, like, we are humans, and we can acknowledge, like, oh, that girl's pretty, or oh, that guy's handsome, but you'll never have what we have with someone else.
Right.
And knowing that, like, oh, I could easily go and do something with another person, but, like, what we have, like, that's commitment, and that's, if I broke that, like, that would be going against who I am as a person.
Right.
So it's just, I don't know, I think it's different for everyone, but you just really have to know how sacred a relationship is. It's not a game, it's not something you could just, like, play around with and cheat on and then get back together with someone. Like, it just has to be, you have to bring it back to the old times when it was, like, a legit, like, ceremony and, like, not sacrifice, but just, it was sacred.
Yeah, and, I mean, back then, too, like, there was no opportunity to slide in someone else's DMs.
Slide in the DMs.
Pretty, like, yeah, just, it's easy today, but I think even with that ease comes, like, it's a challenge, and when you truly commit yourself to someone, it becomes easy. Like, it's like a no other option mentality. It's like you go into this with absolutely no plan B, no plan for failure. Like, this is what you've decided to do, and there's, like, no other way you can get around that. So my question, I'm curious your answer to this, because I haven't thought about this either, is, like, what is the right point to have that conversation? Like, when did we really have that, I guess? And then, like, when do you think would be kind of too soon or not too soon?
Like, what conversation? These
Talking
are things?
about, like, these are the things that you would have to do for me to break up with you. Like, what is true commitment? And, like, even mentioning things like future. Like,
so I think they're all on different levels. We talked about, I think it was like a month in, about this is how I feel about cheating. This is how I feel, like, I think, honestly, the podcast brought up these questions, but if I had known this information before, I think you should talk about it right away. Like, these are, I know it's uncomfortable, you're like, it's new, but I think, not the future stuff. I think future stuff should come later, but in the beginning, you should say, okay, you and I, like, we're gonna be in a relationship, possibly. If you do this, this, or this, like, that's endgame for me. And, like, I'll give examples, like, mine was if you cheat on me or if you, like, physically hurt me. Like, those are done deals. Those are done deals. And I think also you should go into depth about, like, what does cheating mean to me? Because I think everyone has a different definition. Some people, like, there's, like, a slippery slope, but...
Yeah, like, is flirting cheating, or, like, is, you know, physical contact cheating, is sliding in someone's DMs cheat? Like, you have to make that clear, because if it's not, it's like on those days where maybe you're in a fight or you're not on the best terms, and then you know, your mind starts wandering and you start to just kind of, like, feel around, like, okay, we never really clarified this, like, maybe this is okay, and so you go do that,
Yeah,
and then
you're
it
like,
just...
you never said it.
Exactly,
Like, I flirted with someone, you didn't say that was cheating, but I think making those really clear. And then also, if you, like, full-on cheat and you're like, well, you never said it was, like, something you were really against, but for us, it's like, if it did happen, it's like, I literally told you.
Yeah.
It's like, if you do this thing, like, you lose me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so important to bring up, I think.
Yeah, so I'm going to disagree with you on something you said.
Okay.
I don't think bringing that up, like, immediately is the best idea.
Okay.
Because I think from my terms, like, yes, I really liked you. Like, I'm talking, like, first few weeks, like, maybe even first month or two. Like,
okay.
Yes, I really liked you, but I was, like, I don't know, that's just, like, a conversation that, you know, when you start, you're kind of casual, you're trying to figure each other out a little bit,
Okay.
like, you like each other, and I think it does depend on, like, you know, for us, we were hanging out for a couple months, or not months, a couple weeks before we made it, like, official. For some people, like, the first date, they call it official. Like,
Yeah.
for some people, you know, they never really put a label on it, and then one day they're like, all right, let's get married. But, like...
I think, okay, so I see where you're coming from. I think when you are either about to make it official or you are making it official, that's when the talk should happen.
Okay.
I don't think it's first date material.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Definitely
not. I mean,
not.
you can bring it up, like, oh, this is something I, like, really would lose respect for in a relationship. But,
Yeah.
like, you could have talks about that, and I think that comes over time. Like, it comes out because people want to say these things, like, please don't do this.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I
and
agree.
I think you got to feel the person out too,
Yeah.
because like we're really close. Like we clicked very quickly. We could open up with each other. Some people don't like doing that. Like some people have a wall that you kind of just you really got to get to know them before they break down.
I agree.
So it is kind of like an intuition. Like you should just kind of know like okay, now is the right time. But then on the other hand, like if you can't get deep with someone, that's kind of an issue.
Well, then it's not really.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll say it's different for everyone, but I think it should be pretty early on. It shouldn't be like a year or two in. Like,
Yeah.
okay, now let's talk about, because it's like if something already happened,
Right.
like now I'm instating it and you're like, but that doesn't,
Right.
it doesn't really mean anything anymore.
Yeah.
I think it's like before something does end up happening.
Definitely. Keep going.
I want to ask you about the future one. When do you think the talks about the future should start coming up?
So, I'm gonna open up, and our first talk, I was a little uncomfortable, and I think you knew that.
Yeah, I did.
Because it kind of, I don't know, for me, it was something that I hadn't opened up fully. Like, I feel like I didn't put my full self out there. Because there's always, like, I was myself, like, of course, but there were things, like, you kind of always bottle up, like, things you aren't ready to share with people.
Yeah.
And so, with that, like, I don't know, it was like, okay, I can't even think about the future yet because I haven't been my full self around you. I haven't shared, like, the most important parts of myself, like, the parts that could affect anything down the line in the future. So with that, I think, like, when it comes to it, I don't know. I think it's just, like, you gotta feel it out once again.
But also, like, on the other hand, when we did have that talk and we were uncomfortable and it was, like, for me, obviously, it was, like, oh, shoot, like, I scared him. Like, I never meant to do that because I'm someone who I'm, like, let's talk about it. Let's, like, do it, all the things. I don't really think, and I think most girls are like that because it's, like, our nature to think about the future. And I'm just a planner, but I knew it bothered you, and it made it that much more important for us to, when we talk about it, like, we make sure it's intentional.
Right.
And you like it now.
Yeah.
You like,
Yeah.
I don't know, I think that was meant to happen. Like, you were
Yeah.
supposed to get uncomfortable because maybe that was, like, a block you had in your life for the past few years, and you needed that to happen in order for you to get past it. Because if that never happened, like, every time I mentioned it, you might have gotten a little, like, ugh, like, I don't want to talk about that. So I think sometimes people need to be pushed. Sometimes.
Yeah.
I do think people need to be pushed sometimes, and like I said, conflicts in relationships are almost always lessons.
Yeah.
Almost always.
Yep.
So I think, the future talk, and there's different future talks. There's the let's plan for the future, and then there's, like, let's just talk about it, and, like, talk about what would be nice, like, just dreaming about it. And I think the dreaming, it's, like, it's nice, and it should come like deeper into the relationship, not first date material, but that would be a little scary. Although Schuyler did mention marriage on our first date.
Allegedly. I wasn't, not this marriage, but just marriage in general.
Marriage in general. I was like, oh.
I don't remember that. I think you're lying. But
no, it happened.
So one of the big things we did, which was really fun, was we did dream boards or vision boards. Which, if you don't know what that is, basically you kind of find out pictures of things that you want in your future. You print them out or find them in a magazine, you cut them out, and then you put them on like a board and you hang it up. So what we did was we did our own dream boards together. Like we printed out the pictures and then we did like an arts and crafts night together. And then after, when we were done, we talked about it, which was really, really cool because our dream boards were clearly like two separate people. Like we both had our own visions of the future, but in like opening up about each other, not only was it like an opportunity for me to learn more about you, but like it showed me what you wanted in the future, which like it just showed me another side of you. Because like there's you right now, and then there's like your vision of the future. So that was a really fun activity. I'd recommend people do that because just dream boards are really cool to have. I'm looking at mine right now and I've got some cool stuff up there. And it's always a good reminder, like you don't have to just go through the flow of life. Like you can set goals, and if there's something you want, like you can look at it, like I'm looking at my stuff, and like pursue it, like take the action necessary to pursue it. So did you get anything special out of that night? Like were there any big lessons or something you really enjoyed or anything?
I really enjoyed, afterwards we took each of our boards individually and we went, like, pointed to the individual pictures. There's probably, like, 15 pictures on there, 15, 20.
Yeah.
And we went through each individual one. It's like, this is what this means to me. This is when I want it to happen. And, like, this is why it's on my board. And I think it's important to do that because you could have a quote on there that, like, I look at and I see a quote. And to you, it's, like, it means something, and you explain that to me, and it's like, oh, like I wouldn't have noticed that because it is your board, and it's like from your heart. And even for mine, like an example, I was nervous about doing this. I put on my dream board like two hands with wedding rings, and I was like, he's gonna get scared. Like maybe I shouldn't do this, but at the same time, I was like, no, this is my board. Like this is something I really want to put on it, and it didn't mean like, let's get married.
Yeah, like my face wasn't on it or anything like that.
Yeah, no, and we talked about it, and I, like, explained, like, what this means to me is, like, it's commitment. It's not, oh, I want to get married, like, in a few months. It was, I want to find a commitment in my life, like, not just in a relationship, not just with us, but, like, with other people and with things. Like, commitment is so important to me, and so this picture signifies that. And, you know, someone looking at it, they would have been like, oh, she wants a wedding. Yeah. Like, it's different things like that. And I'm trying to look at your board and see
what I have.
Like, even you have two people climbing up a mountain. Like, that could have so many meanings to you. Yeah. And I just see people exercising, and it looks insane. Yeah. So it's just like, definitely. It gives you a deeper look into someone's soul, because you really, and that's the thing with these boards, you have to go all out. Like, don't be nervous, this is your thing. It's really important to do that. Yeah, it was a lot of fun too.
Have we done any other exercises that you really enjoyed? Or even like date nights or events or just an experience together that you've really gotten a lot of value out of?
I think honestly just we're always experiencing something new together. One of my favorite things is a lot of the time on the weekend we'll drive home to New Jersey to Schuyler's house. And so it's a 2-hour drive, and we'll listen to Relationship Theory, which is Tom Bilyeu's podcast. And they answer like 10 questions an episode, like 5 to 10 questions. And we always pause it, like after they answer, we listen to their answers and then we pause. And a lot of the time we have different answers, like, which is fine. Like, I like that. I think I enjoy that more because then we can kind of see each other's perspectives, and we learn so much about each other each time. So listening to podcasts is definitely exciting, and it's something I've never done in a relationship before. And I see I see how much it helps. It's crazy. Like, I just want everyone to do it because it's like it helps so much. Yeah. And I think like a big thing out of that is like when you are answering and say like I don't necessarily agree with it, like it's not immediately shutting down, blocking you out. Like it's
okay, well, let me listen. Like, let me learn, kind of get inside your head, understand it a little more, which you were talking about last night a little bit.
Yeah.
Just understanding, like, each other's world. Like, what do you want? What do you see? Why? Like, the big question, why? And when you dive into that, like, you learn so much more, and sometimes you realize, like, you judged the answer at the first, like, when you first heard it, but then when you understand, like, the why behind it, it begins to really, really make sense.
Yeah.
Which is just another form of connection, like another form of just understanding each other more.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
and
awesome.
then another thing is, I mean, we always find like fun little, mostly on Facebook, we'll look at events in the area, and there's always something fun to do. Like one of our first, like our third date was a firefly walk. Oh my God, it was adorable.
It was awesome.
So he mentioned early on, and I have a point to this after, but he mentioned early on in our relationship, like, oh, I love bugs. I'm a nature guy. Like, I've just always loved nature and animals and bugs. And so I went on Facebook, and I was like, okay, I'm planning our next date. Like, I have to find something with bugs. It was summertime, so it was perfect. And I found this, like, firefly catching walk.
Sounds awesome, right?
It sounds so cool. And for me, I was like, okay, cool. And it was, like, an hour away. And we went, and we didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, right now for people listening or watching, like I want you to picture, like you hear firefly walk, like what do you think? Like for me, I was thinking, okay, there's gonna be like this beautiful walkway, there's gonna be some bushes, maybe some like nice lighting, and then you're gonna have just like fireflies like surrounding you, and it's just gonna be super romantic, like it's gonna be an opportunity to connect. So what was it?
And we went, and it was a kids event, and it was mostly parents with kids.
Yep.
And it was a huge
all parents with kids.
All parents with kids, and
Yeah.
it was like a huge farmland, and it was beautiful. It was like the most beautiful scenery, and we went on like a nice trail. It was also very like you should have been dressed as if you were going hiking, and we were dressed pretty nice.
Yeah.
I think I wore a dress and flip-flops, which was not a good choice. But like I didn't know what it was. Like I thought I was looking at fireflies. That's all I thought I was doing. And we walked, and there was all kids. We got a few looks when we first arrived because they were like, "What are you doing here?" And we had the most fun.
Yeah. And that was huge. It was like,
Yeah.
this didn't turn out how we expected it to, but she, who I just met, like, she's making the most of it, and that's awesome. Like, I loved that.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this. Like,
Yeah, it was such a great...
And an opportunity to, like, make the most out of something that you didn't expect.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. What was the point?
So the point was also paying attention to what the other person likes and making an effort to do those things. So, you know, he probably didn't expect me to plan like a insect hunt from what he was telling me, but I did. And then on the other hand, I'm a huge Broadway musical fan, and like I know a lot of people aren't, and like you definitely aren't. But
I wouldn't call myself a fan. No,
not
I
a
like
fan.
it, but
I'm like a fanatic. But
yeah.
I was a little nervous because like before in the past, if I've asked someone to like come see my show, like a significant other, like they're just weird about it. They're like, yeah, I don't really care for it. But you were so excited to come see my first show that I was in, and that meant so much to me. And even us going to see a show together, I was like, should I ask him? Like, I don't know if he'll be happy. I don't know if he'll like it. And you did the best you could. Like, you didn't...
I liked it.
You liked it.
Liked
yeah,
it.
You really liked it. And that made me so happy. And even if you didn't enjoy it, like, you didn't show... I wouldn't have been able to tell. Like, you just made it so special for me. And just you being there with me was so special. And you continue to do that. We've seen a few shows now, and we're going to Broadway tomorrow.
Yeah.
And, like, it's just so... And I know that's probably not the most ideal way you'd like to spend your weekend, but, like, you're doing it because you know what makes me happy. And, like, at first with the insect thing, I was like, I'm not super into insects, but, like, because it makes you happy, I want to do it.
It's dope.
And so just... That's something we do a lot. It's like, I know you would enjoy this, so let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and
That's important.
over time, like, especially, it became less about, like, what we did and just, like, spending time with each other.
Yeah.
Like, even just last night, like, we went out to eat, and since it was the day after Valentine's Day, it was an hour and a half wait. And I know, like, so many people would be like, oh, this sucks, like, this is terrible, I'm tired, I'm hungry. But, like, we made the most of it. Like, we walked across the street, and we went to Barnes & Noble, and we were talking about different books, and then, like, for the last hour or 30 minutes or whatever it was, like, we were just in Cheesecake, like, doing questions and talking and just, like, spending time with each other and enjoying it.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I feel like we say so many things.
Yeah, so
we just do I don't know, that's the thing, we're just always putting in so much effort.
Yeah.
I never feel like you're slacking off or like I'm slacking off. I feel like we're always meeting each other in the middle, or like one of us is surpassing a little bit and then it's like, oh, I got you back this time. It's so important that happens.
But it's not even like an expectation. Like
No.
if Kat goes above and beyond for me, like I don't feel like I have to. It's just like I enjoy it. Like I enjoy kind of getting on that level and helping her out in some way, or making an awesome experience in some way, because it is effort. Like you can't expect to have the habits and the routines from the first part of your relationship not carry over to the rest. And so like again, it goes back, like if you take the first few months and you just coast and you just enjoy it, like you're not building that foundation, because don't expect like when things get tough to just pull out like this resilience and this ability to connect if you haven't formed that in the first part of the relationship.
Yeah.
So.
Because over time, it's like if stuff comes up, it's like we know we have a good foundation. Like we're gonna go through this, and we know we're gonna come out the other side because we have all these tools.
Yeah.
We know how each other we know how we think. We know how we feel about certain things. So like, let's do it.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, everybody.
All right.
So we hit like 51 minutes right now. This was a first awesome experience. Thank you everyone who's listening, watching. My request for you is, I enjoyed this a lot, and I hope you did.
I did.
I would love to do this again.
Yeah.
So if anyone has any questions, if anyone has any talking points, anything they want to send in, whether you are a listener or a watcher, definitely send it my way, or send it to Kat's way. So Early Risers Movement on Instagram. If you are watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment below. You can reach out through email, like whatever way you can get in touch with me, let me know. Get in touch with Kat, let her know. Wherever you're watching or listening, find all her contact information. It's going to be video description, show notes, everything like that. And yeah, if you have any other questions, definitely let me know. And if you enjoyed this, drop a like, drop a review, drop a rating, whatever you want to do on the platform you're on. I would love some feedback. We would love some feedback.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you everyone so much for watching. I appreciate you all. Keep killing it. Thank you, Kat.
Thank you for having me, babe.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.